Marburg is also a viral condition. It's caused by a Marburg virus, and it's very close to Ebola, as you've all heard. However, it's not as infectious as Ebola, but the mortality is also very, very high. How do you get Marburg? It usually starts as zoonosis. The disease is usually on animals, and then they transmit from animal to maybe human being. And then when it's in the human being, then we call something human-to-human transmission. So from animal to man, and then from man-to-man transmission. So that is how it all starts. So you may come into contact with certain animals who are in the bush. For Marburg, one of the animals is fruit bats. We usually get them in caves, and then maybe other areas, hiding in holes and so, those things. So sometimes they eat fruits. So when you go into the forest, maybe you see some leftover fruits and other things, people may be tempted to maybe pick it, and in so doing, you contaminate yourself. So when you get the infection, between 1-2 days to about 21 days, you start showing the signs and symptoms. What are the signs and symptoms? It usually starts like fever, the general bodily pains that we always talk about. You may be having diarrhea, vomiting, some you may be coughing. And then you become very weak. Then you start showing a symptom we call hemorrhagic symptoms. Hemorrhagic means bleeding. So you start maybe bleeding from the nose, bleeding from the eyes, bleeding from the gums, and then you may have what we call internal bleeding. The internal bleeding, you see it in your vomiting. So when you vomit, it will be blood. Or when you pass stools, it will be blood. So when it gets to that state, then it's very, very serious. And in that state, the mortality is very, very high. As I said, it's about 80%. You see, so one thing we can use to contain the virus is early detection. So you suspect it as early as possible, and then you start whatsoever interventions that you need. We call it case management. And then you make sure that you go through all the protocols. The protocol is what we call social distancing. When people get the infection, you don't have to get too close to them, because they discharge secretions, body fluids, and then when you come into contact with it, it's likely that that's where the virus will be transmitted to you. So that the same social distancing that we are talking about in COVID, the same principle applies. The next principle is that of hand washing. So like you go into the community or you go into a farm and then you pick maybe a fruit, or you come into contact with a bushmeat animal. If you don't wash your hands properly, then the infection can be transmitted from there. So the social distancing and hand washing is also good as far as prevention of what Marburg is concerned. But the most important is early detection. And then you make sure that those who are living in remote areas, farmers and other things, you make sure that you avoid contaminating yourself with animals who are in the bush, because that is where we usually get the infection from. But when it's from human to human, then it becomes very dangerous, because the way it's transmitted, by the time you realize, then it has affected so many people. But as I said, the Marburg virus, hemorrhagic virus, is not as dangerous as Ebola, as we all know. But the key is the risk communication that we are talking about. As I said, the Ashanti region, we had 2 cases. Yes, the immediate thing we did was to try and identify all the contacts of these cases. And then we isolated them. We isolated them for the period of 21 days. The reason is that the incubation period is 21 days. And then those very close contacts, we took samples for testing. Fortunately, all the samples that we took were also negative. And as at now, all those who were quarantined, I think they've been released. So in Ashanti region, we are only focusing on the risk communication, because we don't have anybody that we can say is suspected, because we don't have any contacts who are currently in isolation. So that's what we've done. But we will have to continue. we have to continue, because this is not the end. As I keep on saying, within the last 2-3 years, we've seen monkeypox, we've seen Marburg, we've seen COVID, we've seen influenza. So it's likely that more will come. But when we prepare ourselves very well, then the challenges can be minimal. Thank you.